Hello, everybody. This is Pastor Willie, and this is the encouraging word for today. Everyone wants to see proof that faith is real in real life. They need proof that Jesus is not just a religion or a philosophy, but is actually alive and working in people's lives. Not just a philosophy or religion to help you to cope, like a Buddhist monk who teaches you meditation to take you out of the world so you can have a peace in your heart and you don't let things stress you out. People don't need that kind of religion. That's fake. They need something that's real, that's alive. Buddha is not alive. Jesus is alive. And we can try to argue with people. We can try to get our facts in a row and convince people. But that doesn't work. Seeing is believing. People are desperate to see faith in action. And the greatest demonstration of true faith is when we are going through suffering. I know that's not something we want to hear, but suffering brings out true faith. All people need to see faith in action. Suffering, when you go through suffering, you need faith. The deeper the suffering, the deeper your faith has to be. And listen, the deeper your suffering, the closer Jesus will be to you. I've had times where I've felt Jesus closer in my life than at other times. And if I analyze those times, it's always when I'm going through times of suffering. Suffering brings us closer to Jesus, and Jesus comes closer to us in times of suffering. We experience Jesus's presence in powerful ways during times of suffering. Now, we're following the life story of Paul, and at this point in the beginning of his story, Paul does not believe in Jesus. He thinks these Christians are just a cult, an offshoot of the Jewish faith that has to be wiped out, and that Jesus was a false teacher. And it's not true that Jesus died and rose again. He thinks that's nonsense. Jesus is dead, he's in the ground, and that's it. That brings us to one of Jesus' followers, a young man named Stephen. He's named Stephen. God uses him. He does miracles. He helps the poor, the widows. And the Jews take notice of him, and they put him on trial. And they have false witnesses testify that he blasphemed against God. And so he preaches a message, and he doesn't back down, but he says that Jesus is God. And his face looks like the face of an angel. And the Jews get so upset. And then he says he sees Jesus standing at the right hand of God. And they rush at him and they start stoning him to death. He's being killed. And as his suffering gets more extreme, the presence of Jesus in his life gets more and more powerful. He sees Jesus. He actually sees Jesus. God always gives us as much of his presence as we need while we're going through suffering. He gives us more of his presence the deeper the suffering is. He's more real than ever before when we suffer. And that's what makes us a witness. That's what makes us powerful. People see the suffering and they see how we respond. Now, Stephen is known as the first martyr. Martyr. That's a Latin word that means a person who's killed for their faith. It's the literal word is literally the word means a witness to Jesus, a witness who dies. And he's the first Christian martyr. And while he's being stoned to death, Saul is standing there watching. A young man named Saul, who's later going to be called Paul, he's watching all of this happen. He's observing how Stephen is responding. Stephen's not begging for mercy. Stephen's not crying. Stephen's not trying to run away. Stephen's not afraid. So listen to what happens in Acts chapter 7, verse 59 through chapter 8, verse 1. While they were stoning him, Stephen prayed, Lord Jesus, receive my spirit. Then he fell on his knees. He's dying, bleeding. Then he fell on his knees and cried out, Lord, do not hold this sin against them. When he had said this, he fell asleep. And Saul approved of their killing him. When you witness a scene like that, it leaves a deep impact on you. There's no way you can ignore faith like that. A faith that forgives those who are actually killing you in that moment. It reminds me of when Jesus died on the cross. There was a centurion, a Roman soldier, watching Jesus die. And what happens is recorded in Mark and also in Luke. And Mark writes that when the centurion saw how Jesus died, he praised God, the centurion, praised God and said, surely this was the Son of God. The suffering brought this man to believe Jesus was the Son of God. A famous Christian many years ago said, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. Our suffering is a testimony to the power and reality of God to those around us. It's powerful. And the ultimate suffering is being killed, tortured for your faith. And hopefully none of us will ever pass through that. But if we ever have to, God will give us the measure of faith and the measure of his presence, his real, immediate presence to bring us through the suffering. But we all suffer in regular ways: illness, disability, the death of a loved one, family issues, poverty, many things, the suffering of life. In this life we have many troubles. And how we respond is a testimony to the power of God in our lives. And that, my friends, is exactly what people need to see. So God bless you, and I'll see you again tomorrow.